Wednesday Addams, one of the most memorable characters in the Addams family and one of the most iconic characters in modern pop culture. Her influence spans generations through memes, Halloween costumes, and her own self-titled spin-off series. At this point, she probably surpassed her own mother's recognizability, which is hard because Morticia is an icon. But this wasn't always the case. Wednesday wasn't always the star of the show, and she actually barely was a main character at one point. So that's why we'll be talking about how Wednesday became a pop culture icon, the pros and the cons of her stardom, and if this is a good thing or not. Wednesday's iconic deadpan personality is what eventually launched her into stardom, but in the original Charles Addams comic, I wouldn't really say that there's a star, because most of the family is in an equal amount of comics, well, besides Uncle Fester because he was Charles Addams' favorite character, so he actually did have more solo comics. But we really didn't have a chance to see Wednesday's personality too much in these comics because they still were just one-off jokes. But this is how Charles Addams described her in the comics. Child of woe, is vain and delicate, sensitive, on the quiet side. She loves picnics and outings to the underground caverns, loves the color black, a solemn child, prim in dress, on the whole pretty lost, secretive and imaginative, poetic, seems underprivileged and given to the occasional tantrums, has 6 toes on 1 foot. When they were about to create the first Addams Family series, they asked John Astin to play the Addams Family's butler. So the original series was supposed to be about Lurch, which is surprising. But then they asked him to play the father of the family, which became Gomez. And they described the series to him as Father Knows Best with quote-unquote different people. And I honestly think that was the perfect description because I watched the episode of Father Knows Best to see if this was accurate. And the dad literally had the same suit on as Gomez. So we can tell that Gomez was supposed to be the star of the 1964 series. And they definitely stole the show in this adaptation. I wouldn't say that Wednesday really stole the show in this series. She was just an average child actress, although her performance was adorable and she left us with some iconic lines.
Dexter, that doll doesn't have a head.
It's Marie Antoinette. Grandmama told us about the French Revolution and Pugsley chopped off her head.
Although Wednesday and Pugsley had a similar amount of screen time, I do think that Lisa Loring's performance was more memorable than Ken Weatherwax's, and it probably had more cultural impact boosting her popularity today. But they didn't really give her that creepy vibe that she was supposed to have from the comics. They embraced more of Wednesday's childish side, of being playful, having tantrums, and smiling. But on top of that, she did also do strange things like cut off her dolls' heads. This more playful side of Wednesday is probably because they aged her down in the 1964 series, making her 6 years old. In all of the other adaptations following this, Wednesday was portrayed similarly to the 1964 series, with the exception of making her 11 years old, which is the age that Wednesday is in most adaptations. But this all changed in 1991. Like I said in my Why is Pugsley Addams Forgotten video, there are 2 sides to Wednesday's characterization. I'll name them pre- and post-Sonnenfeld eras. Barry Sonnenfeld was a director of the 1991 and 1993 films, and these 2 films marked the point when Wednesday's personality shifted a lot. In the pre-Sonnenfeld era, Wednesday was more like the average child. She was sweet and cute, but not really willful and solemn, like the comics described her as. But in the post-Sonnenfeld era, they changed her personality to be more deadpan, stoic, and dark. We first see this in the Addams Family's big screen debut with the 1991 Addams Family film. But I'd say that she really became iconic because of the 1993 film, Addams Family Values. The shift from a cute 6-year-old Wednesday running to her parents because a dragon died in the Brothers Grimm fairy tales, to a 13-year-old Wednesday setting fire to her summer camp's Thanksgiving play as a political statement was a drastic change, and it made Wednesday outshine the rest of her family for the first time, which was hard to do with Raul Julia, Angelica Houston, Christopher Lloyd, and Joan Cusack as her co-stars. These 2 films by Barry Sonnenfeld still focused on Morticia, Gomez, and Fester, of course, but they put more focus onto Pugsley's and more so Wednesday's characters because they saw how much people connected with her in the first film. Christina Ricci's iconic portrayal in these 2 films and her personality shift launched Wednesday into the limelight. Her sarcastic tone paired with her witty comebacks made her the face of nonconformity, especially connecting to young girls that differed from the trope of the stereotypical girl. This made her stand out from other characters that were made for young girls, especially since the 80s and 90s was a time when we were seeing more outspoken, witty, and powerful female characters. Then all of a sudden, Wednesday was the icon for quirky millennial girls that hated society. This shift of personality impacted the other adaptations after the Addams Family values, but the most recent adaptation has been the most impactful one in decades. Jenna Ortega's portrayal in the Wednesday series. We all know this launched Wednesday back into stardom and solidified her as the face of the Addams Family. Her witty, dark, and blunt personality connected to a lot of people, turning her from the icon for quirky millennials to the icon for edgy Gen Zers. But there's also a downside to her becoming so iconic. Wednesday's rise to popularity again is of course good for the franchise, but this rise to fame also comes at the expense of watering down the other family members and Wednesday's dynamics with them. In the most recent adaptations, they paint Wednesday as more rebellious towards her family rather than society, which doesn't make sense to me because the Addams family is already pretty non-conformative to society, so Wednesday is actually just conforming to society if she rebels against her own parents. Wednesday in these modern adaptations acts like she's better and smarter than the rest of her family. She feels as though she cannot connect with them, and a lot of this rebellion is towards Morticia. I know that this probably is supposed to make her more relatable because a lot of teenage girls start to distance themselves from their mothers, but this new dynamic just makes the Addams family just like any other family. The Addams family is different from the average family in almost every way, down to how their family dynamics work. For example, old married couples can't stand each other. Morticia and Gomez act like they're in the honeymoon phase. Mother-in-laws and daughter-in-laws don't get along. Morticia and grandmama have a great relationship. Kids in their teenage years feel like their parents don't understand them. And Wednesday also feels that way. See, it doesn't make sense. I really don't like this dynamic, although this is probably what makes people relate to Wednesday. She feels as though her parents don't understand her, on top of society not understanding her. That's the recipe for an angsty teen, but the connection that the Addams family has is what really makes the franchise what it is. It's like they pushed everything that made their family dynamics unique to the back burner just to make Wednesday more edgy, which makes it successful, but a lot of hardcore fans don't really appreciate it. Other families act like they're perfect, but they're really dysfunctional. But the Addams family looks dysfunctional, but they're actually perfect in their own way. Yet in these new modern adaptations, they have dysfunction just like any other family. It's not even wacky dysfunction like in the older adaptations. It's Wednesday is not like her family and no one understands her, and it just makes her seem like any other angsty teen when she's supposed to be different from other people. It's like those people who say I'm not like the other girls, but everyone can be not like the other girls because that would just make them like the other girls, if that makes sense. But despite everything I just said, I think Wednesday's pop culture presence is important. She's such an important character because of her fearlessness to not conform to normality. She's an example to others to embrace their originality and stand up to those that oppress and look down on people who are other than our society. This is seen in Addams Family Values and in the Wednesday series, although it was done better in Addams Family Values. But that's a video for another day. Without Wednesday's personality change, the Addams family probably would not still be so popular today, although her popularity came at the expense of the rest of her family's dynamics with her becoming watered down. If you want to see an example of this, just look at what happened to Pugsley and what I said in my video about him. But I think this could be changed if the writers do less of Wednesday rebelling against her own family and more of Wednesday rebelling against society's norms. Because if Wednesday is really the genius that they say she is, she should know that her family does understand her, because they're literally just like her. But that's it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. In the comments, tell me why you think Wednesday became so iconic, and do you like how Wednesday is portrayed in modern adaptations? Make sure to like and subscribe if you enjoyed, and I hope to see you in the next video.